Grace Cherry, just hanging out at home, going through my burlesque archives. I put a little snippet up on my Instagram stories, and I got so many comments about throwbacks that maybe other performers were featured in, and people wanting a bit more of a dip through my archives. And it is a really interesting kind of dip through Australia's burlesque history, sort of 2008 to now. It will take me a little bit to get through it, so consider this maybe part one in a series of trawling through my archives, as I am not really one of life's hoarders, but I do kind of keep every article, media, poster, thing that I've ever done. So yeah, it's pretty interesting insight into what burlesque looked like then to, where I am now. I thought we could call this part one, and this is kind of the magazine edition. These were sort of easier to get through and might be a good taster if this is something you're still interested in. So leave me a comment if you are interested, or what kind of things you're curious about knowing about, especially if it's about what burlesque was like, what the industry was like when I started, or if you're interested in more Tasmania kind of specific content. The first thing I thought I'd share out of all the magazines are actually these programs. I have one, Merci beaucoup, and this one, Voila. So fun fact, the casino that you can see on the front here is Rest Point Casino. It's about a 5-minute drive from the city of Hobart, 20-minute walk kind of from Hobart City Centre, and it was Australia's first casino. Don't know if gambling is something we should be super proud of as part of Tasmania's identity, but it was. And what I think is really interesting is that Tasmania also had a really rich history of the showgirl. So distinct, as we would have seen in much commentary this year with Taylor Swift's album, etc., about the difference between showgirls and burlesque performers. But again, this kind of more grown-up adult entertainment had a history in Tasmania. There are 2 photos that you can see on the front here of Reg Priestman and Mathieu Beauregard, who were kind of the creators of these showgirl shows, and they were proper reviews. It's really amazing to go through the costumes. I actually own a couple of pieces of costuming. That's quite a long story, but you can see some of the amazing costumes that were in these productions, and they were a full scale, I'm kind of covering up the boobs in case a performer is, not really well, performer is watching. Maybe it's not something they're really interested in sharing anymore, but here we go. So there were these really lavish productions housed here in Tasmania, and these programs were gifted to me by a lovely man called Malcolm, sort of back in 2010 when I was trying to find more about burlesque in Tasmania. And I believe he used to play piano for a lot of performances, or was in the music ensemble. And he also used to date, I think, one of the girls in the show, and was a really popular haunt in Tasmania was a venue called Mummies in Battery Point. Shout out in the comments if you remember Mummies. Every person that's done a Dancing Eisteddfod would go there because it was like the only thing open on Sunday late at night. And he just gave me some great insights into what these events were like, what it was like kind of being, maybe not one of the stars, but being around them. And, these were lavish productions that went for a number of years. And if you go to Rest Point now and you walk towards the showroom, you can see some of the costumes beautifully displayed. This is really recent. Most of the staff at Rest Point, I think, prior would have had less idea about the kind of history of performing. So it's great to see now some of programs like these, and costumes are there for everyone to see, and the history has been started to be archived really nicely in the venue. It's a real shame they don't want to put shows on like this and hire local performers anymore. They've done a couple of cabaret shows, but not really with that adult vibe, and there have been some more burlesque adjacent style productions, but they've all been kind of corporate productions, not really featuring local performers, which is a shame because that's how you end up with things like these. It's really by nurturing and offering opportunities locally. when I first started performing, I wasn't very good, I'll just be honest. But by doing it more regularly, I became better. And now I'm not embarrassed when I look at things of myself. Whereas if I look back to some of the stuff that's in my archive, yeah, it's a little bit cringe even from its time because I just didn't get that experience. So it's a bit of a shame, but these productions, yeah, by all accounts, were really incredible. And what was amazing is that it offered a home as well for Australian dancers. Many of the performers that were featured in these shows had performed at like the Lido or the Moulin Rouge and were really homesick. This is my understanding that a lot of them ended up locating in Tasmania because they loved this aspect of performing. But being overseas for a long time can be really hard for people, especially maybe if it's not your first language or just the culture being really different. So it kind of offered this like touch of Paris in Hobart. And I would say in 2025, Hobart is not the most cosmopolitan centre, in the world. And I suspect the late 1970s, early 1980s, it wouldn't have been that kind of hub. So it's a really interesting juxtaposition that this was, in Tasmania in this era. There was no Mona, there was no sort of winter festivals or these sort of cultural activities like we see today. Like even in my lifetime, shops were shut on Sundays. There was no Sunday trading. I remember when Sunday trading came in and I was working on checkouts. So that's in my generation, right? And most things were shut, like 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, 2 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. So again, pretty incredible that this quality of show was available. So I really encourage you to go and look up Regmat Productions. Is a really good starting place if you want a bit of a peek, or send me a message if you want to know a little bit more. Yeah, I've always really loved following it, and some of the people involved with the shows have been really kind to share, little insights and images, just for more my knowledge and benefit, I guess. So that's not in my lifetime, but it's a little snippet of history, and I love that I actually own some of these records. So now we're jumping ahead a little bit into my magazine collection, and this is from 2011. So I'd been performing burlesque for about 3 years, and it is the short-lived maybe magazine called Tasmanian Style, and you can see my beautiful friend Scarlett Jezebel on the cover there. And this was a side stage shot from the Australian Burlesque Festival when they toured here in 2011. And I can remember the featured performers were some of my favourite performers from this tour. Tassie, Lady in the Lamp, just don't need to say more. Lillian Starr, Cake Act, don't need to say any more. If you know, you know. And the other amazing featured performer was Candy Kisses, who I still kind of keep in touch with now and love seeing her photography just go and take off. She's incredible. And it was so amazing to have this festival in Tasmania. I think that was the first or the second time that it had been in. So it's great to have that kind of shot of Scarlett waiting in the wings, this guy looking really enamoured with her because she looks so gorgeous. This is still my favourite act ever of Scarlett. She still performs it. It's this beautiful peacock tail, really unique. Really sad some other performer ripped it off, and I don't say that lightly because I'm one of those people that is like, I don't know, a song's a song, an outfit's an outfit, but this tail, the way that it flicks up and then detaches, really unique. And Scarlett toured this act all over Australia, sort of from 2010 onwards. So it's kind of crappy that we saw someone else copy the costume pretty much bit for bit. But there was a really amazing article. It was kind of the lead article. And the photographer and journalist spent quite a bit of time with myself, Scarlett, and Lucy Sky Diamond to get to know more about us, what intrigued us with burlesque, and put in some photos. So they did quite a few photo shoots with us, a couple of interviews. It was like really amazing in-depth journalism, and I felt that journalist got a real sense of what we do and why. And I really love the opening line because if you know Scarlett, you know how this is said. Women should be able to do whatever the fuck they want without being judged for it, and I would say that still holds in 2025. So it's a really great article, and then you can see there's some photos like behind the scenes, this amazing trapeze shot from Lucy Sky Diamond. This was at a show we did called The Beautiful and the Damned Burlesque Review at the Peacock Theatre. And there is a group performance of me. So this is, and I was just so thrilled that we were in a massive magazine. And then lucky last, does anyone remember the Pin-Up Kittens annual? Well, Miss Kitty's Meow were featured in this. This is from 2013. And there's just some really nice interview pieces in here with us, with our famous feather fan dance that we're really known for, and our sailor outfits. And it sort of just talked about what got us into performing, what led us to burlesque, and some of our highlights. Yeah. And I think one of the highlights that we actually mentioned in here was the Australian Burlesque Festival being in Tasmania. And there was a really nice shout out to a rockabilly festival that used to happen out in Longford, which is about 2.5 hours out of Hobart in the north of the state. So it was really nice when I was flicking through this one to kind of be reminded of that. So here we go, a little trip down the archives. If you'd like to see more, let me know, and let me know maybe what you're interested in seeing more of.